Josh Artuso with Community Development.
I think you're going to do it together.
Well, we're doing it together, all right. And Keith Mortimer, our new town engineer. It's the Josh and Keith show.
All right. Good evening. So we're gonna, like they said, this is kind of, we have a combined budget between Josh and I, so we're gonna tag off of each other on areas that we each have respective jurisdiction over. So the first one is building maintenance. That falls underneath the engineering department. You'll see that I'll highlight some of the big increases here. First one is going to be the capital improvements. You'll see we're going from 20,000 to 205,000. So just some background on that. We are, the previous town engineer and her assistant engineer developed a 5-year capital improvement program to address maintenance and items that are on our campus between the town court and the town hall and the police department. And to that end, they had come up with a total capital of somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million, and this includes anything from HVAC replacements to just things that have come to their end of their useful life, whether that's the generator that's for the town hall building, and some other items that we just know that we've got to address here over the next 5 years. We'll be taking a hard look at that list as we go into 2025, but we do know that they had identified some top priorities, and we will take those on here immediately. So this $205,000 includes about, it does include about $20,000 of just general improvements, so that's what we had from last year. Those are sort of the unforeseen situations. The other 3 items that make up this is about $40,000 to seal and stripe the town parking lot, another $20,000 to replace the retaining wall that is behind the town hall generator, and then the big item is $125,000 to upgrade the elevator in the town hall building. That is, most of the components to that elevator are obsolete and no longer fixable. So we're going to do a complete overhaul of that elevator and get it back up to not only code, but also to make it operational.
The plan is to use appropriated fund balance to pay for these one-time expenditures. I've appropriated $910,000 in the general townwide fund, which these costs, including the facility assessment, which Keith will talk about in a minute, within that $910,000. And this also helps the town come in line with our fund balance policy. Fund balance, unappropriated fund balance in the general townwide fund is running a little high compared to the policy, so this just helps rein it in and helps us get some things done that we need to have done.
I have to say that I had an injury a few weeks ago where making steps rather difficult. And for the first time in 15 years, I took the elevator at Town Hall, which I was feeling just fine about until I got a preview of the budget and saw that we were doing work on the elevator, and then I was a little more concerned with taking that elevator. So
We keep it running.
yes, you do.
We are keeping it running, but as I understand, previous assessments by the by Mary, the town engineer, and it had gotten to the point where it's become more and more expensive to fix and maintain.
And I do remember some maintenance issues with that over the years. So
Down for a while.
Has anybody gotten stuck in there?
Does it have to be inspected annually?
It is.
Okay. And it's passed its inspections?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, yep. We're trying to, like I said, I understand that we had a significant, it was down for a significant amount of time because of the inability to get the parts for it, so.
Yeah, I remember signs in the parking lot telling people that if they needed to be on the upper floor, they had to park around the front, and it was a mess.
Yep, yep. So we're working through that. We've budgeted $125,000 for that elevator. We're are working with our service agreement contract that does the work on the elevator now these days. And actually, we're looking at costs that may come in below this, but we're running conservative, just given where costs seem to be headed. The other large item here to talk about is the facility assessment. So I think everyone has heard, or maybe has heard, about the HVAC systems that we have throughout Town Hall, Town Court.
You can literally hear it.
Yeah, yeah. And there's actually, and in my discussions with the rec center folks, they also have some aging systems over there that need replaced. So what we've identified is, so that we understand what we're dealing with, is to actually have a mechanical engineering firm come in and do a complete assessment of our HVAC systems and help develop almost essentially, I'll call it a mini master plan and an approach on how we can keep the systems running that we have, but also then replace them and upgrade them accordingly. For example, I know that over in the town hall, our HVAC system is a cobbled together bunch of residential heaters, furnaces, and AC units, and we want to make sure that we don't just go out and start replacing those at $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 a pop. But I want to make sure that we can do a more comprehensive, maybe improved approach to how we do that work. So these are this is costs in there to assess these systems and to give us a plan to move forward and how to spend money appropriately.
And I'm sure as we start to look at replacing those, we're going to certainly see savings and efficiency and
Absolutely.
operations of newer units
Oh,
that
absolutely.
are more appropriate.
We did something similar to this a few years ago. We had a company come in and assess a lot of our equipment and put together a plan.
Don't remember.
I'm unaware of that.
I think you're referring to the HVAC maintenance contract that we have with Monroe Piping.
Right.
Um,
The first step I thought in that contract was them coming in and putting a full assessment together. So are we doing this all over again?
No, what they did, basically inventory of what existed at all of the town facilities. They never really took it to the next level as was originally envisioned.
So having that in hand, is that something we could turn over to the company that we're selecting or we select to come in so they have that information? So that's a lot of due diligence that they don't have to do?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we would provide them with that inventory.
Yeah. And then just finally, one comment I'd like to make on the maintenance line here of $40,000. We would envision that as we are addressing some of these issues that we have here, whether it's the elevator or the generator, repair, retaining wall, and many other items, that this extra $40,000 we would hope to either keep steady or actually see a decrease in this line item going forward.
With respect to the maintenance line, and, is that something, some monies that we could put forward for like replacing tiles? Those sorts, they're still broken tiles.
Broken tiles.
In the entryway, you're walking through, the grout is not where it should be, so you can feel the tipping.
Right. And we absolutely can.
Okay.
I do believe that probably, from what I observed from underneath, those floors, those tiles have been laid over a plank floor. And so
That's a problem.
there's the issue. So I don't know if that's the actual fix,
Right.
but yeah. Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, that's okay. The town hall building has some unique, construction aspects to it.
It sure does.
All right. I think that's all I had to preview on that one. Everything else is pretty status.
Okay, so this is the budget for the fire marshal's office, which is under community development. The first line item being overtime, that's for when the fire marshal and deputy fire marshal need to respond to emergencies that are occurring after hours. If there's a house fire, an accident, they also respond to support the police department in cases of hoarding situations. So that's what that overtime is for. The two salaries are obviously governed by the union contract. We did have a slight increase in the computer equipment and licensing, as we are going to be purchasing an additional computer so that we have Windows 11 prior to Windows 10 becoming obsolete. The capital purchase, vehicle accessories, that's actually directly related to two line items down, which is the purchase or the replacement of one of our oldest fleet vehicles. We're following the enterprise multi-year plan of replacing our vehicles. So this year, we would be replacing the fire marshal vehicle, which is a 2016 Ford, with a more modern vehicle. And then the capital purchase vehicle accessories is basically outfitting that vehicle with the radio equipment, antennas, lights and sirens that the fire marshal's vehicle requires. So there is an increase in the lease expense for this year, and will now reflect 2 vehicles instead of 1. We've kept pretty much everything else flat in terms of the training and supplies. We did up the fuel cost slightly based on rising fuel prices. Are there any questions on the fire marshal's portion of the budget?
I just have a question on the revenue with the fire inspection fees. That's kept flat between 24 and 25. Yet, in the part-time personnel, there's a note about inspections are up due to the town taking on Xerox. They used to have their own fire marshal, and additional multifamily buildings and businesses. Yet, you're not expecting an increase in revenue for that?
Oh, that's a good point. I believe that the note is a leftover from a prior year's
Okay.
budget ask.
Okay.
We have seen an increase in the number of fees that we are, that we are charging for the annual operating permit for certain types of businesses and establishments. But I think we base that number on current projections, which are tracking right about the same as this current year.
Thank you. That explains if it's a leftover note.
But we are charging Xerox for inspection fees, correct?
Yes, because we are now responsible for those buildings.
This one I can take on. So, a change to this that's not been, that's new to this particular evening of budget. We are pursuing our construction inspector position, which is a part-time position. So that is the first line. So that is showing that we were not anticipating it for 2025, but we are now we will be putting that back in, assuming we have a suitable candidate, and hope to bring that person online as soon as possible, given workload. I would also say we would probably move over the $1,000 for the potential for overtime as well. The dollar values there for staff are just what they are as far as step increases and cost of living increases. We aren't anticipating adding any more staff. We do have a vacant position also within that line for a GIS person. We'll keep that in there for now. However, we may forego filling that position in light of another item here at a lower level that I'll talk to. Everything else on this section of the budget is fairly consistent. Minor changes here and there just reflect accrual as of 2024 and projections, but so there'll be some ups and some downs, but everything is fairly flat. The one item I'll point out before we move too far is the record management. So we are slowly trying to get ourselves to be paperless and to reduce down the amount of hard copies of plans and books and things that we have. So we have identified 50,000 for scanning. That would be scanning not only a lot of the items that are in the Sandbar library, but also those that might be in our archives as well. Just getting these items electronic makes retrieval of the information easier and more expeditious, quite frankly, when we're trying to address residents' concerns and issues that they may have, and we need to pull back some historical information about what has occurred in and around their area that they might be talking about.
For anyone who has spent any time in the Sandbar Library, they would realize that that's a very good expenditure of funds.
Is that for outsourcing scanning or buying scanning equipment, like an engineering size scanner?
Yeah, for outsourcing. We would outsource that. I mean, we started doing a little bit of assessment or looking into this. We realized that we can probably scan somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper for $3,200. So if you want to think about that, it's a standard size bookcase full of binders and SWIP reports and engineering reports. So we just don't have the equipment nor the manpower to do that internally. And these folks that do this on the regular have the ability to quality control and then deliver these items back to us electronically. Our idea is that most of these items, once they're scanned, we no longer will keep the hard copies. And we'll just maintain them electronically. And then finally, the other large item, go down to 40332, GIS Engineering Services. So we have, this is a little bit of a concern that has arisen. As I mentioned, our GIS person, our position is vacant. That person resigned about a month into the job. Not quite sure what their concerns were, but they did not last. We've also had some previous experiences with trying to get our GIS system updated and assets completely documented and accurate. And we think the best approach here is to step back and have a consultant, a firm come in that does GIS, that can come in and get ourselves up to a solid base with our assets in the system itself. We're guessing it's a $100,000 endeavor, but we're unsure at this point. The other aspect of this is we just went through our an EPA audit, EPA DEC, and there are going to be subsequent requirements as being an MS4 town, where our mapping has to be more and more accurate and more complete or thorough in what we're maintaining. So it's challenging to hire the right candidate to probably take us to the level we need to take our system to at this point. We reached out, we did advertise for this position, and we got a fair number of candidates or potential candidates, but most of them came in with either very little education, a class or two in GIS, and no experience, or some ad hoc experience meshed with some education, but nothing robust enough to get us to where we need to go. So we're going to try to take a different approach with this, and in 2025 really get our GIS database up to snuff, and something that we can then work with and maintain going forward.
There's a substantial increase in inspection and engineering fees revenue. I believe it was toward the end of 2023, Coca-Cola Fairlight paid us, I think it was $1.3 million as a fee at the start of the construction project. That revenue is being recognized over about a 2-year period, and about $400,000 of that is going to fall into 2025. We did not budget for it in 2024.
Okay. For the building department, there really hasn't been much change in terms of personnel. Still holding the same employee count from 2024. You will notice that there's a slight increase again in the computer equipment and licensing line. Again, that's associated with our computer upgrades, so that we are in a good position when Windows 10 is no longer supported by our IT department. The other notable increase that you'll see is in the town code compliance line. So we've upped that quite a bit for next year, as we've been taking a more aggressive approach to remedying code violations. These are things that either vacant homes, vacant properties that are not being kept up. We do have a vendor that we authorize to go cut the grass or do cleanups of properties, and then an invoice is sent out to the owner of record from our finance department. If they do not pay, that money then goes on to a tax lien. So it needs to be recognized in the budget as an expense, but ultimately the town does recoup its money over time in this line. Everything else pretty much remains flat from this current year. So if there's no questions or comments on building, I'll just go right into the zoning board of appeals. Again, these are the stipends that are given to each of the zoning board members for their attendance at the meetings. 50% of the recording secretary's salary is funded in this part of the budget, the other 50% being under the planning board. And then, of course, the deputy town attorney to the board is also accounted for in here. The town attorney to the board, I think that's when additional outside potential assistance or additional legal support is needed, but
Correct.
I think we've eliminated that for next year, as the town will be selecting a firm moving forward. So we're not anticipating the need for additional legal support above and beyond what's currently being provided.
Yeah, the attorney costs may end up switching from salaries to a contractual fee, which we pay to the law firm. But
Right, and
we'll see how it shakes out.
I just want to remind everyone that we're looking at that because of our current town attorney, Genesi's expected retirement at the end of the year.
On the revenue side of things, we've slightly reduced the zoning fees based on current projections.
District.
And then going into the planning board, it's much like the zoning board, the compensation for the board members, the other 50% of the recording secretary's salary, and again, the attorney that assists that board. We have upped a little bit of mileage, as we've noticed that members are more regularly claiming reimbursement mileage for their site visits. Slight increase for the signage, and those are for the property under review signs that you see for projects that are going before any of the boards. Another notable expense in this portion of the budget is the master plan expense. So that is the anticipated cost for the comprehensive plan update that the town is going to embark upon. However, that will be offset with the $100,000 grant that we were awarded from New York State. However, we do have to show the master plan expense followed by the revenue to help offset that.
Right. The employee benefits I have up about 33,000 year to year, or about 8.7%. On the revenue side, there is some sales tax revenue that gets charged to this fund. 12% of the overall Monroe County sales tax revenues here. I've got it at 804,000. And I've increased interest earnings to 45,000, up from 20 the previous year, as the rates have been good. Still think the 45 is relatively conservative, so it's a safe number to put in. So overall revenues are up about 24,000. Other revenues. So this particular fund, I actually have the amount to be raised by taxes coming down to zero. I've done that with sales tax revenue and the use of appropriated fund balance. Zeroing it out, along with zeroing out the highway part-town fund, allows us to allocate sales tax revenue to the general townwide fund, which helps offset some of the debt service costs related to the highway building project. You'll hear a little more about that when Pat gives you this highway budget presentation in a few minutes.
Very good, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions for Josh?
Thank you.
Just going back to the GIS with the GIS services, when you talk about GIS assets and MS4 town mapping, what does that entail? Describe to me what gets mapped from a GIS perspective.
Sure. So anything that is what they call an outfall, so anything, so if you have a pond, where the water outfalls from that pond has to be mapped. We have to map location, elevations. Part of this would also be us establishing or reconfirming our manhole information.
But that's all the MS4 stuff?
Well, that's,
Or
it would be all the town stuff, but the mapping for the count for MS4, I know outfalls is one of the big ones that we have to be a part of. I can get you the other information as well. I don't have enough time.
Okay, that would be great.
Great.
And I'll just add that there are areas of town where we're completely missing information altogether. The locations of stormwater pipes and grates and things of that nature. So I'm assuming that would also filling in the gaps in parts of town where we simply have no information at all.
Okay.
This has been an ongoing issue for almost as long as I've been on the board in trying to complete this GIS information. I know that somewhere a long time ago, I think we've contracted with perhaps one of the engineering firms in town to do some part-time work on getting this up to date. Do you remember that, Josh?
I've heard of that.
Okay.
That was before my time, but yes, my understanding is there's been a couple efforts. I know a couple summers ago we utilized our interns
Right.
and the aero unit that our department purchased.
Yes.
So we have been making progress over time, but I think this will allow us to really take a big step forward.
Right. I think we've been working on it, but because it's been so piecemeal that we really haven't made the progress that we had hoped for. And I think with a dedicated effort, hopefully we can bring everything up to speed.
Yeah, what we're finding, I know, I speak for both Josh and I, what we find is there is a big interest by the community to have access to a public-facing GIS. So we've been reluctant. We have a draft version of that, sort of sitting back, but we have been reluctant to release it for fear that some of the information is not accurate.
Sure.
There's just becoming a bigger and bigger demand for this information to be available. So we need to kind of step back before we step forward, and then really take a solid step forward in getting our database up to date and up to, like I said, up to snuff. So we can kind of put this step behind us and then bring someone on eventually to help us maintain it, as well as for Josh's group in the planning side to be able to use it as an actual research and analysis tool.
Thank you.
going forward.
Okay.
No other questions? Thank you, Josh and Keith.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes.